Hi, I'm Lou Scott, and this is the Geppetto Room, where you don't have to be creative to be creative. You just have to be you. Because we're going to explore ideas, concepts, methodologies to help you make decisions that are transformative, because we need those in this state. We need those to enhance the way we live, the way we work, the way we play. Now today I have two long-term businessmen who are going to share some ideas with us. Ideas about an initiative that they're calling the Declaration of Inclusion. I think this is a very transformative initiative, and one that Vermont needs. And therefore I brought them, I think you'll find it very interesting. Now this Declaration of Inclusion purpose is actually to accelerate diversity, one of the reasons. Now it has many important reasons, one of which is those accelerate diversity. But the two things that pop out to me when I heard about this is the following. It's the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do at this time to get more diversity in our society, in our state of Vermont. It's the right thing to do to raise our consciousness about the importance of societal diversity. It's the right thing to do. And we can help, I think this initiative can help eradicate racism. Maybe help eradicate racism from America, from the state, and maybe one day, with God's help, maybe, from the psyche of the human being, maybe. Another reason is we're ever going to attract young people, and we need to attract young people to live, work, and play in our state, absolutely. Without that, we are in economic problems. We need that for stability. We need these young people. We have to attract people, all people, no matter what their color, what their religion, what their race is, what they believe in, what their sexual orientation. Doesn't make any difference. What makes the difference is who they are. And we have to attract those people to our state. And this program, I think, will help that. Now, the second thing about this initiative, it's a smart thing to do. Not only is it the right thing to do, it's the smart thing to do. If you notice in the new census that just was taken, 43% of the population of this country are people of color, people of color. Also, the migration in this country is not migrating to the north. They're migrating to the south and to the west. That means that we have a lot of competition to attract people. So we can't afford to exclude anybody like that from attraction. We have to appeal and promote to all kinds of people. We can't exclude them. With that said, I'm going to introduce the two long-term businessmen in Vermont who are going to tell us about their initiative. Now, I want to introduce Bob Harnish. Bob, how are you? And Al Wakefield, how are you? I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, Bob, and then I'm going to ask Al a couple of questions. First question I want to ask is, how did you ever get interested in this? What turned you on? How did it begin? How did the initiative begin?
Well, Lou, great to be here with you. About a year ago, we learned of the death of John Lewis, the great congressman from the South, and during the discussion of his passing away were videos of his activity in the South toward human rights.
Yeah, it was very early on.
Yes, yes, and he was with Martin Luther King when they walked over the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma. And I'm thinking to myself, here it is 60 years later, what was I doing then? What was I thinking? I mean, I was content with myself in Vermont, and I thought that was somebody else's problem. Well, it wasn't. And maybe some of your viewers are having the same thoughts. Why didn't we all get involved in that? Because that is one of the great transformative movements of this country, to make everybody equal, and everybody equal in the minds of people. So Then, about a month later, we had the death of George Floyd. And we all know, I should say, the murder of George Floyd, and how that dominated the screens.
It gave it more impetus for diversity.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And so, about that time, I contacted Al, and because I wanted to know more about racism, and what people of color think about it, and how I should be thinking about it as a white guy. And Al and his daughter recommended several books, which I read, and then it happened that I was with my cousin from the town of Franklin, Vermont, and he is on the select board there, and he said that they had just passed in Franklin a Declaration of Inclusion, and I said, "Oh, well, tell me about that." And he did, and sent me a copy of it. And I was so impressed with that I brought it to our select board in Pittsford. And I brought it to them at one meeting, and then I went back the next meeting 2 weeks later and spoke to it further. And lo and behold, one of the select board members made the motion to adopt, and they adopted it.
So these towns adopted.
Yes.
Read it. It's a declaration, right? A declaration of inclusion.
Yes.
Read it out loud to everybody.
So what is a Declaration of Inclusion? It's an affirmation and an aspiration that we of a certain town, and now the state of Vermont, recognize that human diversity can be defined as differences in race, ethnicity, religious belief, among other differences.
It's like a welcoming sign for diversity. We have to accept all people.
Yes,
Is that it?
exactly.
And then you make presentations to the towns.
Yes, yeah. So,
Okay.
Recognizing that all people are basically fundamentally the same hopes and dreams, and the same yearning for recognition, the same struggle against disappointments. So here's the declaration that I'll use the town of Pittsford, that the town of Pittsford condemns racism and welcomes all persons regardless of race, color, religion, national origin, sex, gender identity, or expression, age, or disability, and wants everyone to feel safe and welcome in our community.
Right.
As a town, we formally condemn discrimination in all its forms, commit to fair and equal treatment of everyone in our community, and will strive to ensure, and this is important, strive to ensure all our actions, policies, and operating procedures in the town reflect this commitment. The town has and will continue to be a place where individuals can live freely and express their opinions.
Then they vote for this and they sign it.
Yes.
Then now that you have this Declaration of Inclusion, how does it work? You make these presentations to the town, right? Make it to me. Make it like I'm sitting on the board. Make it to the audience. We're sitting on the board. How do you make the presentation?
Well, sure. A part of how we do it is with Bob starting exactly the way he did, and how Bob and I got hooked up. And I must say, in all fairness, there are two other people that are intimately involved in our mission, if you will. That being Norm Cohen, who's a Rutland attorney, and Liz Weinman, who's a strategist and planner, etc. And so I want to make sure that they are included, because it's just Bob and I, and this project has taken on gigantic proportions. We spend a lot of time on it.
Is the organization growing?
Let's put it this way: it's under our control. We're trying to control. We could work on this 8 hours a day, right? Not 8 hours a day, but 24 hours a day, 8 days a week. That's how much energy this thing takes up. But as such, we go to a town. As following up on with what Bob just said, when Bob thought about Alabama and the march from Selma to Montgomery, I went through there as a second lieutenant on flying status, heading to South Carolina to see my father when I got stoned and shot when I tried to eat at a Dairy Queen right on the other side, in fact, of the Pettus Avenue Bridge. So I related to Bob when he started to talk about that and what he was thinking about, and immediately signed on to that mission. And so when we make our presentation to a select board, we talk about that. We talk about stories, narratives that directly relate. And while that was 50-odd years ago in Selma, just in a recent meeting, in fact, we had a couple challenge Norm and I to a physical conflict because we presented the DOI. And so, you know, there's a tremendous amount of intensity around it. In the last few months or so, I have there's been an attempt to run me off the road. Right here in Central Rutland, and I've been given the finger several times. So the problems that existed 50 years ago exist today, and so we try to make that point, certainly in our meetings with select boards and with associations and other groups that we speak to. And the presentations have gone very well thus far. We have 17, 18 towns that have adopted. Project Vision here in Rutland has adopted. A number of other organizations have adopted. The Vermont League of Towns and Cities, as well as the regional planning commissions, have said they buy into it. In fact, we've been working with them on how we expand our coverage because, as I said before, Bob and I and Norm and Liz, the four of us rather, we've got limited resources, limited time, and limited energy. Bob's over 80 and I'm over 80.
When a town signs on, you give them tactics, some things that you expect them to do?
When, in fact, this inclusion declaration includes two parts. It includes the part which says we want to welcome you, in fact, to come to Vermont. And the second part says we want you to include, we want you in fact to take action to include this concept in your policies, operating procedures, and all of your actions. It would be our great hope, in fact, that the governor of Vermont and the state of Vermont has approved a declaration of inclusion, as well indicated or proclaimed an inclusion week. It would be
already, haven't they?
I'm sorry?
The governor has
already. The governor has already done that. We have two proclamations, in fact, in our possession, signed by him. This occurs second week in May, of each year. So it's an annual thing, which will be Inclusion Week, and he has signed the Declaration of Inclusion as we, in fact, wrote it out in proclamation form. I think a great help to us in moving this right along.
Yeah. Well, so when you make the presentation, you leave, you go back to the town with a follow-up, you measure it, you help them participate, or you just take it on honor that they're going to do whatever the declaration
well,
says?
we have kind of an informal way of going back and saying, what do you 3 or 4 months later, what have you done in following up on that? We don't have the capacity for technical capacity to follow up, but we do suggest to them sources, and there are any number of sources in Vermont, including the governor's office, because Susanna Davis up there, who's an unbelievable person and just a skilled lawyer, civil rights and justice person, at this point, right now, in fact, has a set of guidelines for towns and municipalities, and that will be circulated hopefully in the next few months or so as she finals it and as she has the capacity within her office to help bring that to the attention of towns.
So two questions. One question is the idea that when you followed up with the town and you asked them what are they doing, what are some of the things they were doing? Were they doing anything very positive that you were impressed with?
Well, the one town that we do know of is Middlebury, and Middlebury has taken actions to, in fact, bring on consultants to do exactly that, to tell them how to do this better. They've implemented implicit bias.
A diversity consultant?
Yes, they are. They are. In fact, folks that you probably know very well, the former head of the NACP here, as well as the former senator from down in Bennington that had to leave her home because of racism, and another individual as well. So they are well organized. They know Vermont. They're committed to Vermont. They love Vermont. And so they really understand the issues. They understand the history of Vermont. And they understand, importantly, what needs to be.
So the positive thing they did was they hired a consultant. What else did they do? What's some of the things else that they do?
Yeah, I'm not sure what else they've done. We've not followed. It's been 3 months now, and you make a great point, and I think it's time to kind of follow up with them and see exactly how they've progressed along the way. But I did mention I did mention implicit bias. They have said that they will move to review all of their documents to make sure that, in fact, there's nothing in there which militates against welcoming people.
Let me ask, when they vote, or they vote before they vote, what are some of the questions they ask you? What are some of the obstacles? Actually, it's two different things. What are the questions they ask you about it?
Probably the biggest comment, Bob will want to comment on this, is that this doesn't pertain to us. We don't have that problem, if you will, in our community. Number one. Number two, I am not biased. Why do I need this in my community?
That's the same thing they said about vaccinations.
Yeah, and we've been through that for, in one way or another shape, another for 400 or 500 years or so. Those are probably the two. The third one is kind of liability, right, Bob?
Right.
Liability?
Liability, what, yeah.
Yeah, if the town, through this declaration, assures people that they'll be welcomed and accepted, and then they aren't.
There's legal liability?
Well, that was their question, and we say no, and we've approached the Vermont League of Cities and Towns about that, and their legal counsel says no, there's really no liability there.
What do you answer, Al, when they say, well, we don't have that problem? Oh, really?
We say, to define it as a problem is the wrong way to approach it. It's not a problem, having people of different races, different ethnicities, different genders, etc. The bigger context, Lou, is that as you go through downtowns throughout Vermont, with the exception of Montpelier, Burlington, perhaps Brattleboro, maybe Bennington, there are storefronts which are vacant. There are signs that we need people. There
Absolutely.
are for rent signs. There is nothing going on in any of those towns. And maybe 2 months ago or so, I was in Montpelier, and the energy that existed there on a Saturday afternoon was just absolutely amazing. Went to Barrie, some energy, not quite the same. Came to Rutland, stood almost in the center of Centre and Wales, and looked down the street. And there were two people.
Yeah, no vibe.
Between West Street and Center Street, there were two people, and you look down Center Street to Wales, and there was one person. Saturday afternoon at 2 o'clock. Those storefronts still exist. There's nobody working. There's nobody buying. Right. It is as much an economic issue as it is a human rights issue.
It's a major economic issue. The idea that we're not attracting young people, we're losing young people, our fertility rate is down. Absolutely. I just read today that, which is a positive thing, that Scott is welcoming the Afghan refugees.
Yes.
That's interesting. So the concept that it's an economic issue, absolutely. Because the idea of our demographics, we're getting older, is a detriment to our economic viability.
Sure.
So Lou, it's no coincidence that the two areas of the greatest economic dynamics in this state are Burlington and Winooski, and those are the two most diverse cities in the state. Yeah. The governor, you said at one time, you mentioned to me that there's going to be a diversity day or a diversity week. They're planning activities. What is all about?
It's called, in the proclamation, I'm not sure what shape this will take, Lou, but it's Inclusion Week as such. Inclusion Week. The proclamation is this. He signed the same proclamation that we have here, and don't have time to read it. But it's the same proclamation the same declaration that, in fact, other towns have approved or adopted in one way or another. So that's one document, the Declaration of Inclusion, which he's approved for the state. Covers the state, although he can't mandate that each one of the 246 towns adopt it. That's what we are trying to do. But Inclusion Week. Which includes the Declaration of Inclusion. I'm not sure exactly what shape that's going to take, not sure exactly what he's going to do. But I will say this, if I were the governor, being as he's welcoming and wants to these refugees, and in the past when we had the people from not from Vietnam, but we were welcoming
Syria.
From Syria, welcoming those people, and we had certain demonstrations against that right here in Rutland. If I were the governor, every time I opened up a conversation on economic growth, economic development in the state, I would start off by reading or saying or reciting some form of this Declaration of Inclusion. I think it's a tremendous economic tool. I think it's a way of setting Vermont up as being a state that's very different than every other state in the country. We could be a leader. Green, not only in terms of forest and trees and all that, but green in terms of our cultivation of people, our caring for human beings and welcoming them here.
Let me, if you had to summarize, not summarize, just had to leave, what do you want this audience to leave with when you talk about this inclusion, this Declaration of Inclusion? Summarize it for me. What do you want them to leave? What are the major points?
Well, our goal, I think, let me read our goal, to have each Vermont municipality adopt and implement a Declaration of Inclusion. Adopt means formal approval by the municipality's governing body. Implement means the enactment and furtherance of plans, policies, programs, procedures, and relevant training which support and advance the intent and spirit of the Declaration. What would I like to see? I'd like to see all 246 towns adopt this. I'd like to see them act on it. I'd like to see Vermont be known, as I said a few moments ago, as the greenest state in the country, not just for trees, but for people.
Well said. A welcoming sign. A welcoming sign.
Exactly.
Bob, you have any conclusions? Any final words?
Yeah, I would say, you know, the United States is known as the melting pot of the world. We welcome diversity, and it's diversity that's made the United States the economic powerhouse that it is. Vermont is currently the second whitest state in the Union. Vermont is also one of the slowest growing states, and it has an aging population. This is not a good combination for a flourishing economy. Vermont must get in step with an increasingly diverse world.
Okay.
If we are,
absolutely, we can't exclude 43% of the population.
Exactly.
From attracting young people. So we're putting out a welcoming sign. All the towns are putting out a welcoming sign. Do what you can to welcome all people, no matter what they are, who the color, what their sexual orientation is, or like that. When you talk about melting pot, it always seems to me that the racists tried to turn off the burner of the melting pot. Keep it. But it doesn't happen. Doesn't happen. Okay. Any other last words?
No, we appreciate you're inviting us on.
I hope I can invite you back on.
This is the
again.
part of
I
our
think I will.
campaign, so
I think I will.
we appreciate your support,
Okay.
Lou.
Let me make some summaries myself. Declaration of Inclusion. It's the right thing. And not only that, it's the smart thing. It's the smart economic thing to do to each town. It's the smart thing, and it's the right thing. Here's how you might help, in my own opinion, my own feeble opinion compared to the knowledge that these men have. Practice. Don't judge. We all have there's a tendency deep inside of all of us to be a little somewhat prejudiced and biased and racist and so forth. Practice accepting people in a compassionate way, accepting who they are, not the way they look, not even the way they talk, what they do, or what they dress, who they are. We need those people. We need those young people to be in our state. If you serve on a town board or know anybody that does and so forth, talk it up. Contact these individuals. Talk it up. Join the organization. We have to put out a welcoming sign to everybody. This is diversity. This is what this whole thing is about, diversity. We want to accelerate diversity. And when we accelerate diversity, we actually are accelerating the economic viability of our state. Okay. And take every opportunity, the last thing, to condemn, participate in activities that condemn racism. Condemn, because it's contemptible. With that, let me give you my usual close. Get vaccinated. Get the 2 vaccinations. And if you're old enough, get the 3rd one. It's not political. It's medical. You need to do it. Don't say you don't need to do it. The government is not trying to flip tricks on you. Okay, you have to do it. And if you don't think you need it because you could be a carrier. Let's get over this whole thing about vaccinations. Okay. I want to thank my guests today again. This is the Geppetto Room, where you don't have to be creative to be creative. You just have to be you. I'm Lou Scott. Until next time.